Moin moin! Welcome everyone. We are the foundation for the study of cycles. My name is Lars von Thienen and welcome to today's session on cycles. You know, once a week, every Monday, 18 o'clock Central European time, we meet here together to have a quick and short checkpoint on current status on cycles in the markets, to learn something, to discuss something. So feel free to join us here in the chat section and drop me your questions. I will always have a look at your questions here so that we can have a live discussion on question and answers around cycle analysis. So my name is Lars von Thienen, and what I will try to do today is keep it short so that we don't run too much time. We will have one main topic I will discuss today on the current situation and cycle analysis related to Bitcoin, but don't expect me to do a forecast on Bitcoin. But there is something important to talk on cycles in regards to that data set where we can learn from. And that's the purpose what we're doing here today. And then I will keep it more short today because on the weekend we will have an extended Cycles TV here. And I'm very happy that my colleagues, Andy and Bill, will join us this weekend on Saturday, and we will have a review on the current Cycles magazine which is out now. And we will discuss something about the articles which are in this magazine, what it means in regards to cycle analysis. And yeah, please join us on Saturday here live in this channel and have a short chat on the latest magazine on content with my colleagues Bill and Andy. So that's why we'll keep it clearly short for today. But let's get into it for today. So I hope you have been part of last week's session, or if not, maybe you have viewed it afterwards, because you know we analyzed the data set in National Association of Active Investment Managers Index, the Exposure Index, you might remember. It's a kind of sentiment data set. I showed you how to upload this data, and I've asked you to do your cycle analysis and to match the cycles of this exposure index to the S&P, the main markets. So we have now pushed out an report on that. So, and if you have not done it, we did it for you. So here's the current mapping. So I will show it here on the screen. This is the mapping of the NIM exposure index, which you see here down below on this chart. And this is what I told you last week, how to upload, grab this data, upload this data, do your cycle analysis on this data. And in the upper section here, you see now how these cycles relate to key turning points in the major market. We've written an article around that. So you will find this as a blog entry in our cycles.org website. So if you want to read a little bit about it, you're invited to grab the blog entry. I hope you have done this analysis on your own. I've trained you last week. And what it means as we are today, we have a sentiment extreme. I mean, we know it from market behavior, but what's more interesting is that's also what the cycles tell us here in regards to the extreme. The important takeaway here, as always, if we discuss about cycles, so this is about cycle analysis and not about market forecasting. Market forecasting is what you need to do after you did the cycle analysis. But cycles give us a clue on timing. Cycles and cycle projections do not give us a clue on how high or how low a market or index or whatever we are analyzing will move. That's important. So at this point in time, so cycles tell us clearly here at this indication that we are at a sentiment extreme and the sentiment cycles turn. But we don't know how high this extreme, from a short-term perspective, from a short-term timing perspective, if we just look at tomorrow or the next 2 to 3 days, we can't do price projections. And within these points of extreme, where we are at the top here, you have these extreme price movements. And that's where cycles will not help us to predict price movements. They just tell us from a timing perspective here, we are at the turn of the sentiment here. I mean, to project price movements, there are other tools you maybe know better than not cycle analysis, like Fibonacci, time ranges, and whatever. So if you combine cycle analysis in regards to timing and price projections like Fibonacci levels and whatever, and if you have a match between price level and timing level, then you have another method of market timing. But this is on cycles. So I just wanted to catch up on last week's session. So this is the mapping. The next topic is Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. We go to the moon, whatever. I mean, even today, Elon Musk is now investing in Bitcoin, whatever, and moves to the market. This is an extreme we know about. And I think you all want to predict Bitcoin movements. So let's run our cycle analysis for sure. And there's something in which we need to review. Maybe not the obvious you would expect, but a very, very important takeaway. And that's why I now want to share the next 5 to 10 minutes a little bit and talk about Bitcoin dataset. So as we always do, and what you all can do is head over to the cycle analyzer. This is what every member is able to do, just if you're new to this channel or just follow it just for the first time. This is our cycle analyzer from the Foundation for the Study of Cycles. We have some pre-built data sets, so I will do nothing special here. We just head over to the Bitcoin data set. And let's first pause here for a second before we just jump to the cycle section here. What do we see here from the raw data set? This is the raw data set we see here. I mean, this is what we call a parabolic move, yeah, or parabolic data here. I mean, you could lay this, yeah, below this here, and then it goes. Whoop. This is a parabolic move. And to be honest, if you put a data set which has a main parabolic move in it, and then you want to run digital signal processing on that, it will not really help us what it will output, because if there's just one parabolic move, and we only have one parabolic move here in this data set, digital signal processing from a long-term perspective, if we now try to squeeze out long-term cycles, this will not be possible based on digital signal processing. But that's based on the data we put in. So before moving over to the table or the scanner and the spectrum chart, we need to be aware of how does the raw data set look like. And like if you have just a parabolic, this is purely a parabolic move. We don't have ups and downs in this data set, at least not for these 3-year period or these 1,000 bars we are analyzing here just as a standard set. So therefore, the first thing, and this is really important, once you see this kind of data set and do your cycle analysis, this is a parabolic data set, you will not find valid long-term cycles, yeah? Because from a long-term, there's just one parabolic move in this data set. I repeat myself here, but this is, I think, the message. So first, skip every cycle which has a length above 100 or whatever. So 100 days or 200, everything about 150 days, let's start with it. You can ignore it because the data set is not able to give any clue in any digital signal processing here. We don't have enough data to do the signal processing if we just have this main parabolic move on point 1. Point 2 is you will also observe that the Bartle score is not really valid in this case. That's the second important topic we need to be aware of. When we see this parabolic data set, even we need to treat the Bartle's value with care. And I would even say we can ignore the Bartels value in this case because it cannot analyze over the whole period if there is a statistical significance of these cycles, which is measured by the Bartels index. It won't. You can't trust it in this parabolic data set. So these are the two important topics. Once you run your cycle analysis on such a kind of data set where we have an extreme parabolic move, and this will happen from time to time in different data sets we've seen years ago in other main data sets. So you need to add more data, a very long period of data, but then you might fall into the trap that you have too much data and you are more or less averaging cycles from the past. This is another topic I will not talk about today. The only thing you could look at is shorter term cycles. Yeah, shorter term cycles, because for shorter term cycles in this overall data set, there is enough data. And that's what I would recommend, or what I would like to do with you now today in this session. So let's have a quick look at shorter cycles here. I mean, for sure, you could argue that this cycle with a length of 281 and 195. So let's activate them. Look good, yeah. So this is what we did. I mean, for sure, from a cycle perspective on this data set, it is a fit. But you see, there's mainly one or two repetitions, and it's mainly fitting against this parabolic move here. So this is the only clue which is taken out of this data set. So we need to have more data sets if we want to deal with longer term cycles. Or we need to go up to the higher level to weekly cycles, so what we also did, and even longer term monthly cycles. But please don't use these longer term cycles just purely on daily charts. Today I want to talk about shorter term cycles here, which might help us in predicting short term up or down moves in this data set, because this is what we are all looking into the market. Wow, what happened now in the Bitcoin market? So therefore, I will go back in time now for a second. So I mean, it would be interesting if we would have been able by cycle analysis predicting these, I don't know, short-term cycles here. So what I've done here, I will just deactivate it. I've just gone back into January 20th January this year. Yeah, so I've now so the light blue data here, I've just moved the end of our analysis here somewhere into January. And I will just disable the view on the light blue data here. Yeah, and now let's pay attention to the shorter term cycles here. This is what I said. So as you remember what I said in the beginning, careful with the long-term cycles. Careful with the Bartels score, yeah. So ignore the Bartels score, and then the next purely objective method is here. Look for the strength sorting. Yeah, strength is another important measure which gives you a clue on the cycles which have the most impact on movement per bar. And if I tell bar, I mean 1 day. So in our analysis here, 1 bar or 1 data point, each new data point represents 1 day, as we're looking on daily data set here. So, and the strength score here, in this case, gives you an indication about the cycles which have the most influence on movement per day. And if you're looking into kind of projections into the future, you should ignore these cycles, which might be there from an analytical standpoint, but anyhow will not influence price movement from day to day, because your trading horizon, in this case, if it's daily, you're interested in the cycles which mainly drive the price per day. Even cycles cannot predict how high or how low it will go. This is what I told in the beginning. We can sort the cycles which have been found by their most or lowest influence on the price movement. So that's what the strength score is. So if we can't trust the Bartels, if we can't trust longer term cycles based on what I've explained before, we can switch to shorter term cycles and just focus on the strength. Yeah, so this is what I will do here. And this is an objective cycle analysis approach. So, and I don't know, what I always try to explain, start with the first one, maximum 3 to 5 cycles here. And I just activate now from, here from top to bottom, the first 3 most dominant cycles here. I will explain the other topics in a moment with the lengths of 40, lengths of 47 and 50. And now we see that they are very closely related in regards to their lengths. Yeah, so you might think about what are we doing here. They are very closely related. As I told you, you can ignore the lower Bartle score here anyhow, because of these shorter term cycles in this parabolic data set, you won't find any clue out of Bartles here. But the strength is interesting, and we want to use the one with the highest strength here. So that's why I just picked the first 3. We can also start with just the first one here. So, and this is now the composite cycle here. You should always check then also in the past if this static cycle, it's a static cycle because it's fixed from this point of the analysis, has some nice alignments. You won't see it in this view here because you need to zoom in. So therefore I will just zoom in, and then you see the relative alignment here, the low, here the top is aligned to low, top. So not everywhere, but this is just a quick check for this single cycle here. Yeah. Okay, short-term cycle. Here we are back in 2019. So there, I mean, this is why the cycle has been picked by the digital signal processing, because there are interesting correlations, and it seems like a high relation here. So I've now plotted this as composite cycle. So let's activate the next on the list here, 47. And I will just enable and disable it so you can follow on the chart what happens to the composite while I switch it, while I switch it on and off. Yeah, just have a look what happens to the low here, where I'm pointing to. Now you just see, even if I activate 2 different cycles, the highs and lows are not changing a lot in the overall projection here. So we can enable it in this. Let's now move forward and activate the next one here. Just go down the list. So we will use with a length of 50. So we can also observe, I will now activate it on and off. Again, what you see happened, it just very slightly moves here. So it doesn't matter if you activate them or not. So this is the procedure. I think you got it. And if you look at the composite cycle here, does it look like a composite of 3 cycles? No, if you just see the composite here, it looks like there's 1 cycle. And if you would start now to measure here from top to top, you would think, okay, this is more or less 1 cycle, and the amplitude is changing over time. If you just have a look at what is shown in the composite and you don't know how the composite is constructed, yeah, you would just from a visual standpoint see 1 cycle with, I don't know, the length about 48 or whatever, if you want to measure from top to top or even bottom to bottom. Yeah, so, and maybe just the amplitude changes. So, and this now gets more interesting here. And then there's another way to visualize that here on the chart. If you don't plot it as an overlay, so you can disable the overlay and just plot it as a kind of indicator below this data set, then you will see here, and I can make it a little bit bigger. So it looks like more or less there's 1 cycle. I will now scroll through it here, and the amplitude of the cycle goes up and down. If you don't know how it's constructed. So we know how it's constructed, so it's a composite based on 3 cycles here. And what it tells us here is a very important story about the synchrony of cycles and so-called false cycles. I did a full seminar on that, and I will show you it back in a second where you can review it. But first of all, there are phases or periods of time when this composite cycle gets inactive. Yeah, this is the point when this, compared to the overall amplitude here, between September 2019 and, I don't know, March 2020, this cycle here has become this composite cycle has become very silent, yeah, because you see the composite amplitude change is just very low during these periods here. While in the period of here on the left-hand side, starting March 2019 until July 2019, this period here where I'm now with my mouse pointing, this composite cycle was very dynamic, yeah, and the amplitude was very high. So the composite cycle was highly active. While then we had a very calm period of this composite cycle. And then back in, I would say here at this point in time, April 2020, this composite cycle, yeah, has got back to life. Yeah, so the amplitude of this composite cycle got now bigger. And then we could say here at this point in time, then in August 2020, we had then the silent, again, a very silent period until, let's say, yeah, November 2020. And now this composite cycle is in a very active state. Yeah, and why I'm telling you, or why I'm talking about this topic here, if we now zoom into these periods, we will have a next interesting clue on that. So, but just to summarize, my second topic I wanted to bring across is that first I told you, skip long-term cycles, skip the Bartle score if you have a parabolic data set you're analyzing. Point one. Point two, use the shorter-term cycles here purely on the strength information. So pick the cycles which have the most influence on price movements. Go from 1, 2, 3, not more than 5. So don't make it too extreme. But if you point this one, if you then get to the point that even if you activate these cycles into a composite, and the cycle looks like one cycle, yeah. So the cycle here below is, it looks like this is one cycle. Then we are talking about so-called false cycles, which is an important finding by Dewey. And Dewey has written a full chapter in one of his books on cycles, and I will come back to that at the end because that's very important topics from Dewey. I'm just repeating what he did here and why it's important. So it's a so-called false cycle because if you analyze the period here from April to July, it looks like the cycle is highly active. And if you would project based on this knowledge into the period of October and November here, you would fall into the trap that the cycle has become calm and is not active anymore. So that's important. So once you use it for a projection and you will see, oh, it looks like it's interesting, but then the cycle disappears. You might have heard about it like a kind of, the cycle disappeared. But what really happened is you don't have one cycle, it's a composite cycle, and just it becomes active and inactive. But you only know this based on signal processing, that you know, okay, this is a composite cycle based on 3, and this is not one cycle. But now let's zoom into it. So this is the third important topic for today, and I've prepared just a quick zoom in view here on this chart here. So bear with me for a second, and here it is. This is the same what I showed you on the cycle analyzer just some seconds ago. It's just a snapshot here, and I've highlighted some periods here. So I've told you about the first period where we had this composite cycle in a very active state. Yeah? So this was, and it's, I hope you can see it, it's a little bit with a gray background here in this case. And I will not talk about the individual up and down swings here, but in general, in this phase, also Bitcoin has a very dynamic up move, compared to the period before where we had the silent period window here, beginning 2019 until March, April here. So, and then the cycle reached, this composite cycle reached its activity extreme in July. Yeah, so this is where, at least from the short-term view here, we reached the high point, and Bitcoin went to 12,000. So from 3,900 to above 12,000 US dollars here. So an increase, it tripled, yeah, during this period here. And then we know from this composite cycle, and this is then this longer period here, from July 19 until the next activity period starts in March 2020, where the overall composite cycle was inactive and was not very active in regards to driving price markets here. And we've mainly seen the sideways market in the price series here. And we know from this composite cycle that the next active phase here, when the price ring really has getting back and up again, is the period here from April to summer last year, so July 2020. I mean, even it looks like a very small move here, but we are getting from 5,000 to 10,000, so doubled. Yeah, so during these 3 months or 2 to 3 months, Bitcoin doubled again, while we had, I don't know, six months of sideways moves here up front here. And then you see in this period from July to November last year, which is this period here, the cycle has again become very calm and slightly disappeared during this period here. And the next activity phase of this composite cycle then started in, I would say, the group period here from November 2020. Yeah, and it might end, I think it has not ended yet, so March, and we can have a look at it later, or you can do this anyhow on your own after this session here. So we are quite at the end of this final move here. And again, during this phase, we saw an important movement of Bitcoin here from 13K to 40K, so it tripled again. And the same what happened here in the early 2019. It tripled again during the period where this composite was highly active. And that's not the full story here. So what we can now even more, if we even zoom in another level here is, and I hope if I've just highlighted it with small blue lines here below the chart. And I will go back to the cycle scanner in a second here. If you see even the lows and tops of this composite cycle here, and this is then what's again outstanding if you do the cycle analysis here, the tops and lows of this composite cycle are very clearly in alignment with price behavior. Oh, sorry for that. Again, here in the second period, beginning of 2020, here the low, the high here. So the swings have clearly been monitored by this composite cycle. And now getting back to today, what you see here, even in this parabolic move, if you zoom in here, the low, the interim top here, and the low here at this point, then the high, I think this was early this year, where we reached the first time 40K, then moved down, to this cycle low here, and you can't wonder, then that it moved up. And this was, I think, mid of February, so this is where I went back in time just to see if there's any predictive value in what we're doing here from the lessons learned. And you see that and we can see in a second the exact date and time. It was mid of February, and we go back in a second. Mid of February, this composite cycle predicted a low in the Bitcoin area here, and then an upturn on the shorter term cycles from mid-February into I think March. And let's go back to the real analysis here again. So this was just a zoom in to explain it. And if we now zoom in on the chart here, this is the same composite. I've just plotted this as an indicator. And you see this was the situation 18th of January. Yeah, sorry for that. 18th of January, not we have the beginning of February, so I switched 1 month here. So this analysis has been done on 18th of January. Yeah, and if we now do a close zoom in here, it predicted the kind of low of this composite cycle, which showed in the past, and this is what I tried to explain, which really showed in the past that going back to 2019, when this composite cycle was active, it was highly valid in the Bitcoin market. This happened again, I think, in end of 2019, beginning of 2020, when this composite cycle was highly active. It has really had predictive value. So we had two phases during the last 2 years when these short-term composite cycle was highly active in the market. So now this is the third time we see again this composite activity is rising since November 2020. And that's when you can use this kind of cycle analysis, because we've seen in the past that it was highly valid in the past. 2 times again, it was really of predictive value in the market. So then we can use it a third time. And this is what has been shown by this analysis here at end of January. Predicted Bitcoin after we have reached the 40K, beginning of January. What the cycles exactly showed up here as composite. We should go down into end of January and then move into February. And if I now put in what the market did, yeah, we know that maybe the upswing, at least from this cycle analysis here, would be available to project. I mean, it's always easy after the fact, yeah, to do this kind of stuff. And I'm not here to tell you what Bitcoin will do in the future, but I want to bring across some lessons learned on cycle analysis and when cycle analysis works, when it not works, when you can use shorter term cycles, and the last topic for today, I will get back to it. When you have these closely aligned short-term cycles with the lengths of 40 days, 47 days, and 50 days used here, which show you a kind of new false cycle. You need to pay attention to the period when the composite cycle gets highly active. And that's when you always get predictive value out of these. Yeah, in general, you could also call them false cycles. Because in the period when they are calm, they are not of any predictive value. But I've shown you from the past, even if you zoom in here, and we can plot this as an overlay. Yeah, you see here in this active period, summer 2019. So you see how the low, the top, the low, the top, the low, during the active period of this cycle here was really predictive. Yeah, and then we can go back to the period, I think it was this one here, yeah, where you see this movement here from this low to this top, and then again here to this top here. So where we again had this predictive value of the cycles. And then the third point when this cycle has become active was November. Yeah, this one, November here, where we had more or less, yeah, the top here, the low here, or this then was a sideways move, then the up moved into January, and now the downswing and the upswing here. And then this cycle is going out of activity again. So yeah, at least after end of February or after the upswing here is completed, this shorter term cycle will disappear again. Yeah, so then we can't use it anymore. So that's the purpose of this false cycles. And then you need to get back to the weekly, monthly cycles to get other clues on the long-term behavior. Okay, that was a long story, but I think there was a lot in on short-term cycles. And if you want to, before I get back to your questions, if you want to know more about these false cycle topics, I will just point you to a video I did here on this channel. And I just recommend search for the synchrony of cycles, yeah, which I did in October last year. And during the first section, I think, yeah, during the first 15 minutes, I will talk about Dewey's finding of the topic any observed cycle could be a combination of many closely related cycles. And this is what we saw right currently on the short-term cycles in Bitcoin. So therefore, Dewey is mainly pointing to the periods when the composite cycle gets low and disappears. So you need to be careful when you think about this is just one cycle, and this happens often if you just follow the Hurst approach, because then you try to align the lows and lows, but it's a composite cycle, and this is what only digital signal processing can tell you. But again, if you want to learn more about this topic, please go back to this session, and there's more on that. So that's the point I want to bring across for today. You can do this on your own if you just go to the cycle scanner, open the Bitcoin chart dataset, go back in your analysis somewhere here into January, what I'm doing here. You will see the 3 cycles showing up. Activate these cycles, and you will have the same picture where you can start off here and think a little bit of. Okay, so maybe drop me your questions. I will stay here now for some second. Jason, does your analysis use strength and not Bartle's shorter cycles apply to any other besides, or is it more like the topic why I'm using strength for today is the main reason is that we have a parabolic raw data set here. So if you disable anything, that's the reason. If you see this kind of data set, and doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, waves or whatever, digital signal processing in parabolic data sets will not work well, at least not if you are trying to find longer term cycles. Point 1. Point 2 is the Bartle score tries to give you a clue on the statistical significance of the cycles in the full data set. And because you just have the parabolic data set, any long-term cycle will not have any statistical significance in this data set. That's part of the method. That's because of the approach. That's how the Bartle score works. That's why in this case, so the root cause is the parabolic data set. You cannot not trust the Bartle score. So that's why, but you can always switch to the strength score, because the strength score, at least from the digital signal processing, give you a clue what are the most important ones driving price movements. That's the reason in this specific case, I use the strength score and ignore the Bartle score. And this is what you should keep in mind if you have similar data sets. So the Nathan, yes, thanks to seeing you again here. Always nice to see you coming back to the sessions. I love it. So stay here. How did you limit the endpoint of your data for analysis? So I mean, it starts always with the overall data set. This is what's the starting point if you just open up the analyzer. There's no special reason in regards setting the endpoint. I'm just, what I do, or how do I pick an endpoint if I want to get back into the past and see if there's some predictive nature in. I try to get to a point before an important move happened in the market. For example, here I'm going into the period of January to see if cycles would have been able to predict us this bottoming period end of January, which we saw in Bitcoin. So, but there's no specific rule why I picked the 19th or 21. So I just go somewhere here into the middle before the bottoming happened. Then update the analysis, and that's the reason, getting back to this idea here. So what I did, and therefore checking, okay, this is what the short-term cycles and this composite, which was out of sync. So the only thing I need, or you need to take care into account if you change the endpoint here, that you still have enough data points in your analysis here. So if you go over too much into the past, with selecting the endpoint of the analysis, you might get into a position where the amount of data gets too low, and then you need to add data on the left-hand side of the chart here to add more data. But that's the main reason. So I'm just switching the endpoint just to validate if there is some and to learn. Yeah. So this is not which will help much moving into the future, but it will help you learning from the past and learning from which cycle combination have worked out in the past. So analyzing, for example, the behavior in January, February, you can switch the endpoints just within the period you're interested in. And then if you find combinations of cycles which have been predictive, you can use them in your forecasting approach moving forward. So the reason switching the endpoint is you should always analyze different periods of the past data set to find clues on cycle combinations which worked in the past, and then you have an idea of what can be used now then moving into the future. Okay, that's I hope this helps a little bit, Blair. So, but that's the main reason. Log scale. I mean, it would be an easy click, but it's not implemented yet, so we should think about that. Yeah. I think anyhow on this parabolic data, even log scale will not tweak out better data, but in general, if we have more long-term data, log scale will help. Yeah, that's it for today. I think, oh God, we're 45 minutes. Sorry for, again, taking this long session. I just wanted to talk about one topic. And it took us a long time. So therefore, let's quickly close it. Thanks for your attention. I hope this was some interesting learnings on what happens in the market and what can we learn from it in regard to cycle analysis. Please join us on the weekend on Saturday together with Andy and Bill, and we will go over the current magazine and some content. So thanks for joining me today. Have a nice week and talk to you later. Bye.